Hello everyone, I'm Paul McGuire Grimes. Most trilogies leave you waiting years in between entries, but not the case for Netflix's new Fear Street trilogy, as Fear Street Part 2 1978 will be streaming July 9th, just 1 week after the release of Part 1. And I want to talk about it. This is Paul's trip to the movies. We last left Dina and her brother Josh shook by the fact that the urban legend of a witch named Sarah Fear had struck again, killing many of Dina's friends at Shadyside High School. Now Dina and Josh settled in for a spooky ghost story, recalling the night that Sarah Fear haunted the kids at Camp Nightwing in the summer of 1978. The sequel features Stranger Things star Sadie Sink as Ziggy Berman, Emily Rudd as her sister Cindy, and Ted Sutherland, Ryan Simpkins, and McCabe Sly as the camp counselors. Fear Street Part 2, 1978 is once again directed by Lee Janiak, who co-wrote the screenplay with Zach Olkowitz. Now, if you saw Part 1, 1994, you'll remember the clear inspiration it drew from 90s horror offerings like Scream and Urban Legend. And as you can probably tell from the title, Part 2 is an homage to the 1970s, 1980s slasher flicks like Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Sleepaway Camp. There are even direct call-outs to The Exorcist and Carrie, and a back-and-forth discussion about Stephen King versus Judy Blume. Now for me, the 1970s offered up some of the best horror films to date, so it's evident why the filmmakers turned here for this century that's set on the grounds of a haunted summer camp. Now, while the film is bookended with Dina and Josh's story from 1994, there are a new crop of characters for Part 2 that finds the kids and teens from Shadyside going up against their rivals from Sunnyvale for camp games. Now, as the night of terror progresses, Ziggy and the rest of the campers hide from the killer, while their sister Cindy and fellow camp counselor Alice are trapped underground discovering Sarah Fear's hidden lair. They're hoping to find answers and determine if their destiny is all predetermined by the curse and writings of the witch. Lee Janiak and Zach Olkowitz abide by the rules of horror movies and note what's needed for a sequel. There are horny camp counselors caught having sex and doing drugs, and you're then left to wonder if, when, and how they'll succumb to the killer. The same can also be said for those who venture out in the middle of the woods late at night to check on something. And like any good horror sequel, the body count is higher and the kills are more gruesome than they were in the first film. The thrills and chills are enhanced by a really killer soundtrack, and Marco Beltrami and Brandon Roberts' score. Their score is noticeably different than it was in Part 1. This time, they're really leaning into the strings and choral tones often found in 1970s horror. And while Part 2 has a different look and sound to it, it still feels connected to Part 1. Part 2 is an effective slasher flick, as director Lee Janiak takes us back to camp, tells a good ghost story, and still has a few tricks up her sleeve. I'm giving Fear Street Part 2 1978 4 out of 5 ticket stubs. If you like my review today, click subscribe on my YouTube channel. I got some of the movie reviews as well as Fear Street Part 1 1994. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Paul's Movie Trip. If you like these Fear Street movies, I want to know what your thoughts are. And then go to my website, paulstriptothemovies.com, for even more reviews. Thank you so much for watching my review of Fear Street Part 2 1978. This is Paul's Trip to the Movies.